Why do some people live in constant expectation of a great future that never arrives? This haunting question speaks to a psychological phenomenon that touches countless lives, often invisibly. Many individuals seem suspended in dreams of potential, waiting for their real life to begin, convinced that greatness lies just over the horizon. Yet the years pass, and the anticipated future remains forever out of reach. This dilemma is at the heart of the Puer Aeternus, Latin for eternal boy, an archetype described in depth by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. The Puer Aeternus is a figure of youth, possibility, and transcendence. On the surface, it represents vitality, creativity, and resistance to conformity. But its shadow reveals a reluctance to grow up, an aversion to commitment, and a fear of limitation or responsibility. Jung observed this pattern particularly in modern men, though it manifests in women as well. These individuals often chase idealized futures or spiritual heights while struggling to engage with the demands of real, grounded life. In our time, characterized by endless options, shifting identities, and cultural glorification of freedom, the Puer Aeternus is more relevant than ever. Understanding this archetype sheds light on personal stagnation, dissatisfaction, and the spiritual hunger that modern life can't seem to satisfy. This essay will explore the psychology of the Puer Aeternus, its appeal, its dangers, and its potential for transformation. By confronting the shadow of this archetype, we can learn how to move from fantasy into authenticity, from dreaming to living. The archetype of eternal youth. The term Puer Aeternus, Latin for eternal boy, has roots in Roman mythology, where it described youthful male deities like Iacchus, an enigmatic figure associated with Dionysian rites and the Eleusinian mysteries. Iacchus symbolized ecstatic renewal, joy, and divine youth, forever untouched by age or decay. This archetype transcended mythology to become a powerful symbol in modern psychology, where it was notably explored by Carl Jung. Jung viewed the Puer Aeternus not merely as a mythological figure, but as an archetype embedded in the human psyche. He saw it as the divine child, a symbol of potential, new beginnings, and transcendence. The Puer represents the part of the self that is always seeking the light, restless, hopeful, and full of dreams. Within this archetype lies a deep well of creative energy, spontaneity, and an almost magical optimism that can inspire radical innovation or deep inner transformation. These energies, the childlike enthusiasm, wild imagination, and refusal to be bound by convention, are vital to the soul. They embody the sense of wonder that drives exploration and artistry. The Puer Aeternus is the spark behind bold ideas and the yearning for meaning beyond the ordinary. Yet this archetype also harbors a shadow. When unbalanced, the Puer resists responsibility, flees from structure, and shuns maturity. He may live in fantasy, perpetually waiting for life to begin someday, avoiding real commitments and the grounding necessary for growth. He may fear limitation so intensely that he never truly lands, never puts down roots. Jung likened this condition to a balloon that floats away untethered, full of light and promise, but directionless, drifting wherever the wind takes it. Without the counterbalance of discipline, the eternal youth risks becoming lost in his own potential, a prisoner of endless beginnings with no destination. The shadow of the Puer, psychological immaturity. In modern life, the archetype of the Puer Aeternus, the eternal youth, often hides in plain sight. While it may initially manifest as charm, spontaneity, or visionary idealism, Its shadow reveals deeper struggles with psychological immaturity. The pure resists the weight of responsibility, craving the freedom of endless potential while avoiding the burdens of actual commitment. One of the most telling signs of the pure archetype is an aversion to stability. This often takes the form of fear of long-term commitments, whether in careers, relationships, or even personal goals. A man might enthusiastically dive into a new profession every couple of years, each time convinced he has finally found his calling, only to abandon it when the novelty wears off and the grind of daily reality sets in. Likewise, a woman might find herself drawn to passionate relationships, but repeatedly undermines them as soon as deeper emotional ties threaten her sense of independence. In both cases, the shadow of the pure whispers that true fulfillment lies somewhere else, always just out of reach. This archetype also expresses itself through chronic restlessness, starting numerous projects but rarely completing them, chasing dreams while neglecting the present. Life becomes a string of beginnings, with little follow-through. Idealism replaces realism, and the need for excitement can overshadow the value of perseverance. Boredom becomes intolerable, prompting escapist behaviors, whether through travel, excessive media consumption, or even substance use. Emotionally, this pattern often leads to cycles of enthusiasm followed by burnout. The inability to endure difficulty or routine results in emotional highs and lows that can leave the individual feeling empty or directionless. As Jung warned, the bigger the front, the bigger the back. The brighter the projection of potential and future greatness, the darker the hidden fear of limitation, failure, or adulthood. Shadow work begins by recognizing this avoidance not as a flaw, but as a defense mechanism, protecting the psyche from wounds associated with responsibility and limitation. Only by integrating the Puer's idealism with the mature discipline of the Senex can one move from potential to actualization. The devouring mother. The hidden root, Carl Jung's concept of the mother complex, explores how the maternal archetype, when distorted, can manifest in two opposing aspects: the nurturing mother and the devouring mother. While the nurturing mother fosters independence and inner strength, the devouring mother unconsciously binds the individual to a state of perpetual dependence. This dynamic lies at the heart of the Puer Aeternus, the eternal youth, who remains trapped in a cycle of inaction, dreaming, and avoidance of mature responsibility. Importantly, the devouring mother is not always a literal parent. She is a psychological symbol, an inner or external force that promises unconditional safety at the cost of personal growth. This archetype may appear in the form of overbearing authority figures, rigid ideologies, or institutions that offer security in exchange for autonomy. In each case, the individual feels held, protected from the unknown, but also subtly smothered, as if any step toward individuation would be a betrayal of the safety they've been granted. This illusion of protection becomes a prison. The pure internalizes the message: the world is dangerous. Stay here where it's safe. As a result, fear of risk, change, and failure takes root. The adult under this influence often waits for permission from a symbolic parent, a boss, a partner, or even a belief system, before making significant life choices. They may defer dreams or avoid responsibility, not from laziness, but from a deep unconscious loyalty to the mother, who promises to shield them from harm. For example, a talented artist might spend years perfecting their craft in isolation, afraid to show their work without the imagined blessing of some external authority. This hesitance is not just fear. It is the emotional echo of the devouring mother's grip. True growth begins when the Puer recognizes this dynamic and dares to leave the comforting womb of safety for the unknown terrain of adulthood. Mythological mirrors, Peter Pan, Icarus, Hermes' myth, and story have long mirrored the inner lives we lead, offering symbolic language for complex psychological states. The archetype of the Puer Aeternus, the eternal youth, appears vividly in mythological figures like Peter Pan, Icarus, and Hermes, each reflecting different dimensions of the youthful spirit that resists the weight of adulthood. Peter Pan, perhaps the most recognizable image of the Puer, lives in a fantasy realm where time is suspended and responsibility is perpetually deferred. Neverland is more than a setting. It is a state of mind where emotional depth is avoided and vulnerability is masked by adventure. Wendy, in contrast, represents the pull toward maturity, inviting Peter into a world that includes love, consequence, and growth. His refusal of her offer is not just a plot point, but a psychological stance. The fear that growing up means losing wonder, rather than integrating it into a grounded life. Icarus embodies another face of the Puer, the dazzling, high-flying spirit intoxicated with the thrill of potential. His flight toward the sun is a metaphor for untempered ambition and the lure of transcendence without preparation. Icarus's fall is not simply a punishment for disobedience, but a tragic result of energy unbalanced by discipline. It is the shadow side of the Puer. Brilliant, yes, but unable to sustain itself, collapsing under the weight of its own intensity. In contrast, Hermes offers a healthier integration of youthful qualities. As the god of transitions, invention, and mischief, Hermes channels the Puer's imagination and curiosity into adaptability and creative action. He does not avoid the world, he navigates it skillfully, moving between realms. Unlike Peter Pan or Icarus, Hermes matures without losing his spark. He embodies the possibility of living the myth of the Puer not as a trap, but as a gift. These figures, Peter, Icarus, Hermes, live within us. They are not merely characters, but reflections of inner postures we adopt at different stages of life. Recognizing them helps us understand the stories we unconsciously live, and perhaps offers a way to rewrite them with greater awareness, balance, and freedom. The Senex archetype, the mature counterpart. In contrast to the youthful, impulsive energy of the Puer, the Senex archetype, Latin for old man, embodies maturity, structure, and wisdom. Where the Puer dreams, the Senex plans. He represents discipline, responsibility, and the capacity to create boundaries. As the grounding force in the psyche, the Senex brings order to chaos and gives form to vision. This archetype is essential for translating inspiration into reality, ensuring that ideas are not just dreamed, but also developed and sustained. The Senex is often depicted as a sage, mentor, or elder, someone who offers perspective earned through experience. He is the internal voice that values patience, strategy, and tradition. However, just as the Puer can become lost in fantasy, the Senex too has his dangers. In excess, this archetype becomes rigid, overly cautious, and emotionally closed off. It may manifest as pessimism, authoritarianism, or a rejection of change, what Jung referred to as spiritual deadness. Such dominance can stifle creativity and growth, trapping the individual in sterile routine or fear of the unknown. True psychological wholeness arises from the integration of the Puer and the Senex. Life becomes most meaningful when youthful spontaneity is balanced by mature discipline. The Puer brings passion and possibility. The Senex structure, and wisdom. Together, they create a dynamic tension, an inner dialogue that allows for both dreaming and doing. Rather than opposing forces, they are complementary aspects of the self. When harmonized, they empower individuals to live with both vision and integrity. Individuation, the path to integration. Carl Jung defined individuation as the process of psychological integration, the journey of becoming a whole, authentic self by reconciling inner opposites. For the Puer Aeternus, or eternal youth, this path doesn't mean the death of their spirit or imagination. Rather, it is the transformation of that youthful energy into grounded maturity. Individuation asks the Puer to face fears, take responsibility, and let go of the illusion of perfection, without losing the creative spark that defines them. The Puer often clings to fantasy, to an idealized version of the future where everything is effortless and extraordinary. But individuation calls for a different kind of courage. The willingness to step into the present, flawed and unpredictable as it is. It requires accepting that dreams only gain meaning when they are embodied in action. Letting go of the perfect future opens the door to real, imperfect progress. In this process, fantasy becomes fuel for creation. The artist, once paralyzed by grand visions and self-doubt, begins creating every day, choosing consistency over inspiration. The entrepreneur, once allergic to structure, learns the discipline of budgeting and planning, not to kill the dream, but to make it sustainable. These are not betrayals of the Puer's essence. They are its fulfillment. Maturity isn't the death of youth, but its transformation. This powerful idea reframes the fear that growing up means giving up. Individuation transforms the Puer's potential into presence. It channels longing into love, ideas into craft, vision into vocation. The outer world becomes a stage for inner growth, not through escapism, but through engagement. Work, relationships, challenges, these become the proving grounds for authenticity. The transformed Puer doesn't stop dreaming. They dream with their hands in the soil, with their heart open to the mess of life. Individuation is not a straight line or a one-time event. It's a lifelong path of integrating opposites, freedom and commitment, vision and reality, youth and age. In walking this path, the Puer becomes not less themselves, but more fully who they truly are. Practical strategies for integration. When integrating personal growth or creative intentions into daily life, clarity and action matter more than perfection. Start small. Choose one commitment, just one, and follow through. Whether it's writing for 15 minutes a day, reaching out to a mentor, or walking without your phone, consistency over time yields results far more reliably than bursts of inspiration. Let go of the need to do it right. Embrace good enough over perfect. Perfectionism often masks fear and avoidance. The real progress lies in the showing up, not the flawless execution. That means starting the messy draft, making the imperfect call, or launching before you're fully ready. Deadlines and structure aren't creativity's enemy. They're its allies. Set realistic timelines and build scaffolding that supports your work. Create rituals, set boundaries, or designate sacred time for what matters. Structure provides the container in which spontaneity and flow can flourish. Seek out mentors or accountability partners, people who will reflect your intentions back to you and call you forward when you shrink. External support doesn't diminish your autonomy, it deepens your commitment. Track your patterns of avoidance. Be honest. What are the things you chronically delay? Where do you procrastinate under the guise of research or preparation? These patterns reveal where your inner resistance is strongest and where the most potential for growth lies. Use journaling as a tool for excavation. Ask yourself, what am I idealizing that I refuse to start? Where am I waiting to be saved? These questions cut through illusions and highlight unconscious beliefs that keep you stuck. Finally, reframe discipline. It's not a punishment. It's a kind of creative kindness. Discipline is the scaffolding that allows your truest expression to emerge. It holds space for the muse to show up. When you treat it as a tool rather than a cage, it becomes an act of devotion to the work and life you're building. Begin with one step, then another. Integration is not about overhauling everything. It's about building a bridge, one plank at a time, between your ideals and your actions. Love and relationships. The Puer Aeternus, or eternal youth, often sabotages emotional depth in relationships through idealization. Rather than embracing partners as complex, evolving individuals, the Puer tends to project fantasies onto them, an image of perfection that no real person can sustain. When the illusion falters, disillusionment follows, leading to withdrawal or emotional escape. This dynamic is often rooted in a deep fear of conflict, vulnerability, and the imperfections that intimacy inevitably reveals. To the Puer, conflict suggests the collapse of the dream. Rather than facing the discomfort of disagreement or emotional messiness, the Puer may retreat, emotionally or physically, into solitude, distraction, or the allure of a new, unblemished fantasy. A cycle emerges, passionate beginnings, followed by disappointment, then escape. The partner is replaced or emotionally abandoned in search of a fresh ideal. In this cycle, genuine connection remains elusive because true intimacy requires confronting not only the flaws in others, but also one's own limitations and fears. The journey out of this pattern lies in replacing fantasy with presence. Real love is not a refuge from imperfection, but a space where both people can grow. It is built on honesty, acceptance, and the willingness to stay when things become difficult. For the Puer to mature in love, he must stop seeking the perfect partner and start cultivating the courage to be imperfectly known and still loved. Some people remain stuck in their potential because they avoid the risk of maturity. Growth demands discomfort, the loss of certainty, the willingness to fail, and the courage to take responsibility for one's life. Many cling to the fantasy of who they could be, rather than doing the hard work of becoming. Immaturity offers the illusion of safety, while maturity asks us to choose purpose over perfection. But the path to wholeness isn't about abandoning youth. It's about giving it roots. It's honoring the fire of your dreams by grounding them in action. Potential becomes real only when it's challenged, shaped, and tested. If we stay in the realm of endless possibility, we never discover our true capacity. So, if you feel stuck, ask yourself, what am I afraid to risk? The truth is, your dreams deserve more than hope. They deserve commitment. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Begin where you are. Choose growth over comfort. And remember, maturity isn't the end of your potential. It's what unlocks it.